the late 1980s, it was safe to say that anime had made a major push into American pop culture. With a moderate amount of success in the film medium and massive followings of shows like Transformers and Voltron, anime had begun to see some of its brighter days. In 1989, the hunger for Japanese action hit it big in America thanks to 4 pizza-loving teenaged turtles. While these ninja New Yorkers had already been seen in the pages of comic books in 1984, they were embraced as a cartoon show that unleashed the ninja power. Another contributing factor to their success, once again, was the merchandising. T-shirts, lunchboxes, Halloween costumes, action figures, video games, and of course, a live-action film that had kids everywhere wanting to be ninjas. At the same time, there were others capitalizing on the ninja theme. The 1990s saw the release of child-friendly films such as Three Ninjas and a soon-enough box office bomb called Surf Ninjas. The video game industry in the new decade would steer attention from the classic side-scroller to one-on-one fighting games, such as the popular Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Anime was the basis, but as the 1990s were stirring up a lot of change in pop culture, anime was still overshadowed by all of these fresh faces in the media. A few fortunate fans would locate new anime films making their ways over to the States, mostly revolving around the dystopian future, much like Akira. Films such as Vampire Hunter D, Fists of the North Star, and even the anime parody film series Project Akko. No matter how big of a push, anime was still not one of the main staples in American pop culture. It seemed that all that was built from the beginning was long forgotten, and the 1980s seemed to be nothing but a faint memory. In 1993, 20th Century Fox tried to recreate the success and critical acclaim of Grave of the Fireflies by releasing another Studio Ghibli film in the United States. The 1988 film My Neighbor Totoro was one of the highest-grossing anime films in Japan in the 80s. The wholesome story of 2 little girls discovering a magical world captured the imaginations of millions of children in Japan. Unfortunately, its US release was unsuccessful. The creators of the film, Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata, wanted to make sure that this film would not go through a heavy editing process, much like some of their earlier films that were attempted at United States releases. Unfortunately, the culture differences between Japan and the United States made this film release intended for children very difficult to understand. The early 1990s would press on and continue to change culture faster than it ever had before. The newest craze was the internet and the World Wide Web servers, which not only would eventually put a computer in almost every house in America, it would also be bringing people and cultures together like never before. In the world of film and television, cable was sneaking its way into a lot more households, and brand new television stations that featured animation were starting to become vastly popular. The 1990s created a brand new war between network cartoons, Nickelodeon, the Disney Channel, and now newcomer Cartoon Network. In 1995, these networks would throw out a trump card, and it would be the start of a new age for anime in America. In the mid-1990s, there was a new term being thrown into pop culture, and mostly when it came to music. Thanks to the brooding, loud vocals of Alanis Morissette, girl power was starting to take shape. Although, the term girl power itself would show up a year later thanks to the Spice Girls, the point was that women were starting to make a big splash, and it was then that anime would make its own splash in film and television. One of the most popular manga series of the 1990s would get its own feature film. Ghost in the Shell captured the imaginations of fans to the world of cyberpunk. Conjured up by famous author William Gibson in the mid-1980s, it was a world in which people managed to live their lives in extreme contact with computers. This gave characters the ability to travel through the mythical world now known as cyberspace. The film introduced a strong female lead and a world that was unlike anything ever seen in the world of film. It was a major impact towards others in the years to come. Names like the Wachowski brothers would become some of the hottest names in American filmmaking later on. The film itself, once again, most like its anime predecessors, would not get a massive theater release, but it would once again create another cult following. In September of 1995, another popular anime show, would be shown in syndication in the United States. That was Sailor Moon. Based on the popular manga series, Toei Animation produced an anime television series based on that material. It began airing in Japan on March 7, 1992, spanning 200 episodes. It today is one of the longest-running female-led anime series. Taking a page out of America's book, Sailor Moon sparked a highly successful merchandising campaign of over 5,000 different items. This contributed to the demand of the show all over the world and got translated into several different languages. Sailor Moon has since become one of the most famous anime properties in the world. Yet when the show finally came to the United States, it would meet a roadblock, because in order to watch this show, you would have to get up at 6 in the morning Eastern Time. The series was removed from syndication in 1996 after the original 65 English episodes that were originally translated in Canada were broadcast, leaving the show in a cliffhanger. But it would definitely see brighter days as a fan organization called Save Our Sailors was created. The campaigns and petitions were created to bring a now fan favorite back to television, and more importantly, to finish the series. Fans in America now knew what they were missing and they wanted it for themselves. The fans would be heard, and soon enough the show would be picked up once again in syndication by the USA Network a year later, where it aired for several months before leaving the network after broadcasting once again the original 65 translated English episodes. Even though the American fans were left with once again no closure, it was the impact of these 65 episodes that would officially spark a major marketing interest in anime in the United States. The bigwigs had come to realize that anime was in fact extremely popular in America. Everything from comic books to conventions were sweeping the nation's pop culture underground. It was amazing that no one had ever noticed it before. One of the major names in broadcasting got the message faster than others. Ted Turner, the head of the Warner Brothers network, took an interest in this now noticed market.
Continuing our top local story, hundreds of people reported
in 1997, weekday afternoons would be changed forever as Warner Brothers helmed Cartoon Network would introduce its brand new block of programming called Toonami. First hosted by Space Ghost villain turned producer Moltar, this block of shows would usher in the return of some classic cartoons from the 1980s. These shows included Thundercats and the anime great Voltron. It also became a home for some of Cartoon Network's action-oriented shows, such as The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest. The block would be a huge success, and the next year it would be one of the highest-rated time slots for animation programming. In 1998, it allowed the return of Sailor Moon and Robotech, with the same intentions of allowing new fans and old once again to see these revolutionary shows. Anime was finally getting its day in the sun as it started showing up in retail across the United States. Nowadays, it would actually be seen in the open and even in its own section. Bookstores were even starting to make shelf space for manga novels. It would be that very same year when anime would see itself back on the big screen thanks to Studio Ghibli. For the longest of times, Studio Ghibli's biggest fan was John Lasseter. Lasseter, already known for revitalizing Disney's animation studio and bringing Pixar to the mainstream, found the world of Ghibli and knew that there was something truly special here. While Ghibli's founders Miyazaki and Takahata did not see much success in the United States with their films, Lasseter was determined to show the wonders of their work. Disney's subsidiary company Miramax Films, known more for independent releases, gave us the English-dubbed version of the Ghibli film The Princess Mononoke. The film would grab many people's interests due to the popularity of anime at the time, but this time, the film would include an all-star voice cast including Claire Danes, Gillian Anderson, and Billy Bob Thornton. The film unfortunately did not fare well in America, grossing just a little over $2 million, once again due to a limited release. However, the film itself would be the highest grossing film in the world, until being surpassed by James Cameron's Titanic that very same year. It would be the turn of the new millennium very soon, and after all this time and a lot of patience, 1999 would be anime's biggest year in the land of opportunity. Toonami's success was something that network television paid close attention to. The networks themselves were seeing a drop in ratings due to the power of cable television, and decided it was time to fight fire with fire. Fox Kids would add the new shows Digimon and Monster Rancher, based around the popularity of anime and the fad of virtual pets in video games and toys like Tamagotchi. Digimon was particularly Tamagotchi for boys, allowing them to have their digital pets battle one another to gain experience and strength. While the shows really didn't have much in terms of depth or story, the kids were sucked in instantaneously. Merchandising of the battle monsters would cause the fans to gather as many as they could so they could be champions. Then the hammer was brought down on the world of creature gathering thanks to Nintendo's revolutionary world of Pokemon. Originally released as a pair of interlinkable Game Boy role-playing video games, Pokemon would become the second most successful and lucrative video game-based media franchise in the world, only behind Nintendo's Mario. Pokemon would be everywhere: clothing, books, posters, one of the most popular trading card games, and eventually, thanks to its American rights owner 4Kids Entertainment, 4 feature films. These films would be landmarks, as they would be the first anime films to be given wide release in the United States, grossing millions. Of course, 4Kids Entertainment was also owned by the same man who brought the Toonami craze to Cartoon Network, and it wouldn't stop there. In the same year, Andy and Larry Wachowski would release one of the most successful films in American history. Based around cyberpunk and anime influence, The Matrix would change the world of science fiction and fantasy forever. The brand new bullet time special effects would influence every kind of American film, from animation to comedy. When The Matrix released its 2 sequels, they were unfortunately stalled by plots, which turned the story very gray and left a lot of average filmgoers in the dark due to its anime influence. Still, it was official that anime had finally claimed its stake after years of neglect. But 1999 would continue, and then anime would have no more worries about being thrown back into the dark. A young man would emerge onto American television screens, and he would be anime's golden child. In midsummer of 1999, Cartoon Network relaunched Toonami with a new environment, the Ghost Planet Spaceship Absolution, and new host Tom. Alongside a weekday afternoon lineup, the station would also launch the Toonami Midnight Run. It would feature certain shows that the viewer may have missed earlier that day. There were 2 specific shows that would be the crux of this powerful block. One was Gundam Wing, and the other, Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z was actually the spin-off of an original anime show back in 1986 called Dragon Ball. It was created by now anime legend Akira Toriyama. The story revolved around Goku, a pure hero for the side of good. He believed that justice and the power of friendship were enough to even sacrifice himself for those that he loved. Dragon Ball Z was also the story of his son Gohan, and through the seasons, he and the rest of the cast would grow up and face new challenges even greater than the previous. The show featured fan-favorite characters, anti-heroes, and villains cold as ice. But of course, what really drove this show was the action. Originally released on Toonami, the first 52 episodes were owned by the company Pioneer, but Canadian television company Funimation breathed new life into this show, with an all-new voice cast, less editing, and an embraced score by Bruce Faulconer. The popularity of Dragon Ball Z ushered in a new mainstay for anime. Dragon Ball Z would also be graced with DVD and VHS releases in both edited and unedited formats. Viewers who watched Dragon Ball Z also stuck around to watch Gundam Wing. One of the many Gundam-based shows released in Japan, Gundam Wing was the most successful of the bunch, and it created a massive following and spawned its own line of merchandising, including model kits. With these 2 shows shooting to the top of the ratings in America, and news about new episodes of Dragon Ball Z being shipped overseas for dubbing, it was time to usher in a whole new era of anime programming. The waiting was over. Anime had officially become a staple in American culture. No shadows, no controversy, it was everywhere. It had even become the basis of some new shows in the works for some of the more popular networks in America. With all of the efforts finally paid off, now that anime was looked at as a standalone art form, there was one last hurdle to jump.